And here we go. We are going to continue looking at some of the ideas we started talking about in class with Darwin's biggest ideas. Before we get there, let's focus on, or just remind ourselves of the science of taxonomy. Remember that biologists have organized all living things into groups. The three largest, biggest buckets, if you will, are domains. We have the domain bacteria, domain archaea, and domain eukarya. And we can go further. You may recall that the next level down beyond domains is kingdoms. So within domain eukarya, we have kingdom plantae, fungi, animalia, and protists. After we have kingdoms, we have phyla, kingdom, phylum, class, order. We continue going all the way down our taxonomy. Why do I mention that here? We go back to Darwin's biggest central question. Can we explain where all these different kinds of things came from? Plants and fungi and animals and protists and bacteria. Can we explain where they all came from? What Darwin tried to do in his book, The Origin of Species, is explain a mechanism for something that seems pretty obvious to most people, that things have changed. Evolution is a core theme of biology because, despite perhaps other things you've heard about evolution, it really refers to change. How has change occurred? We know that change has occurred. We can look at the fossil record, we can look at DNA, we can see that the things that used to be here are not, and we can see changes that are occurring even today. So if evolution occurs, if things change, how do they change? Darwin proposed a mechanism. The mechanism is natural selection to explain how evolution occurs. So let's be clear. Darwin did not invent the word evolution. He simply used it. He said, I can tell you how I think it might have happened, how we can just look at a mechanism for how things have changed over time. So it is a central theme. That all of life on Earth is connected through a shared evolutionary history. Everything is related. And the origin of life goes back over 3 billion years. And we will talk more about what we know about the origin of life in class. But if we look at what's happened on Earth over more than 3 billion years, we can trace it back to common things. In other words, there is common ancestry to everything on Earth because the things have changed through certain mechanisms. What Darwin did was he laid out a mechanism. He laid out an argument. He said, tell you what, I believe this is how we see the diversity of life. This is how evolution occurred. This is how change occurred in life on our planet. So what did he propose? Before we do that, let's do a little true-false quiz, and let's consider some of the things that Darwin may have considered as he was thinking about his ideas. True or false? Populations tend to be somewhat stable in size. We have about the same number of deer, about the same number of rabbits, about the same number of bears. So, generally speaking, that statement's true. Okay, next. Hang on. Next. True or false? Resources are unlimited. You should know the answer to that from our discussion of ecology. No, they're not unlimited. They actually are limited. Okay, then all individuals of a species are exactly alike. No, there's variation, there's differences. That seems like that would be false, so let's make that one false. Okay, traits can be inherited. Yeah, we understand genetics and DNA now, we can say, yeah, there's probably ways that traits can be inherited or passed on from one generation to the next. So think about these statements. Populations tend to be stable, resources are limited, individuals are different, and traits can be inherited. These all are interesting ideas that are at the core of what Darwin suggested. Darwin said, you know, every species has the potential to increase its numbers exponentially, has the potential to have large numbers of individuals. But for all organisms, resources are limited, and so in fact we do not see unlimited exponential growth. So with these two observations, Darwin said if there's the potential to grow big and yet resources are limited, competition has to be a factor. In other words, not every population can grow huge because there's not enough resources to let it do so. Okay, well, then he also understood that individuals were not equally successful. Not every one of us is going to be a fast runner, or going to be have 20/20 vision, or perfect hearing, or going to avoid disease. There's individual variation. Some of that variation is heritable. That is, it's variation that's passed from parents to offspring. Some individuals leave more offspring behind than others. Okay, now maybe you can start to see this shaping up. If individuals are different, and some individuals leave a lot of offspring behind because of the traits they possess, and some individuals leave less offspring behind because of the traits they possess, that takes us to this idea that individuals that have traits that are better for an environment compete better, use resources better, and leave more offspring. Think about that one more time. Individuals that have the better traits compete better, get resources better, can leave more offspring, and if that's the case, over time, that population is going to have more of the offspring looking like them than of the parents, than of the individuals that have poor traits for that environment. What Darwin did was he called this non-random, unequal reproductive success natural selection. There's a lot of potential complicated words in there. Non-random, that is, all of us don't have an equal chance. There is some of us are going to have a better chance than others of doing certain things, like running the 40-yard dash quickly, or avoiding heart disease, or avoiding cancer, or using resources a little better based on our metabolism. So it's non-random. It's also unequal. That is, it's not everybody is going to be treated the same by nature. If you have the best trait, the better trait for that particular environment, you potentially have the chance to leave more offspring, and that's called an unequal reproductive success. The other term we use for this, and you may have heard this used in some way, is fitness. Fitness doesn't mean here being able to lift weights. Fitness means your ability to survive and leave offspring. Individuals with a higher fitness have better traits and leave more offspring than those with worse traits. And then when you hear the term survival of the fittest, even though Darwin never said that term, survival of the fittest implies that those with the best traits survive at higher rates than those who don't have those traits. So Darwin understood then how natural selection could explain evolution. Let's put it together. Darwin realized that the traits that enhance survival and reproduction will tend to increase in frequency over time. If you have good traits, your kids have good traits. Your kids' kids have good traits. Your kids' kids' kids have good traits. And over time, the population will have more of those good traits, that is, the better traits for that environment in a population. And an adaptation is the accumulation of favorable traits. So Darwin proposed that natural selection results or will result in what's called descent with modification. Okay, that's another phrase for evolution. Darwin proposed that natural selection will result in change over time, change populations, because over time the population has more individuals with the better traits. So bringing it back as we wrap up the video, evolution then explains both the diversity of life and the unity of life. Life is diverse because there's lots of different kinds of species, lots of different groups that can't reproduce with each other because they've all become just different enough over time. And yet, there's also lots of similarity. As we said before, all of life requires water. All of life has DNA. All of life has metabolism. All of life makes proteins. We go through a long list of things that connect every living thing, from a bacteria to a fungus to a plant to a human to a potato to a horse. All of these things have similarities, and yet natural selection has produced differences over time. Let me end by this one thought. Evolution occurs by other ways besides natural selection. That's the one we're going to focus on here. And that wraps up this video.